We've got breaking news as we come on the air in the impeachment inquiry into President Trump. Just moments ago, the House Intelligence Committee released a declassified complaint from that whistleblower against President Trump. It comes just as Acting Director of National Intelligence Joseph Maguire is about to testify on Capitol Hill about these matters. NBC Justice correspondent Pete Williams is pouring through what's in that complaint. I have a copy of it here, Pete. I've only had a couple of seconds to look at it. What do you see?
So, first of all, it's dated August 12th. That's when the complaint was originally made to the Inspector General, and originally intended to go to Congress, and as you know, it was stopped. We know the basics of it. He's complaining about the nature of the president's call with the president of Ukraine. He says he doesn't know who initiated the call. We now know, as we were told yesterday for sure, that this person, whether it's a man or a woman in the intelligence community, didn't know this firsthand, but was told this by what's described in the letter as multiple White House officials with direct knowledge of the call. And then the letter goes through what we now know was in the call, the asking for help in looking into the CrowdStrike issue and the Biden family. And in the way the letter describes it, it says the president used the call, the remainder of the call after congratulating President Zelensky, to advance his personal interests. He sought to pressure the Ukrainian leader to take actions to help the president's 2020 re-election bid. The letter says that this person was told by the White House that there was a discussion going on after the call by White House officials about how to treat it once it was made, because of the likelihood in the officials' retelling that they had witnessed the president abuse his office for personal gain. The letter says there were at least a dozen White House officials who had listened to the call because everybody thought it was going to be routine, and that they were very surprised by the turn the call took. And then the letter says, in the days after the call, this person claims to have heard from multiple U.S. officials that senior people at the White House intervened to lock down, is the phrase the letter uses, all records of the call, especially the official transcript, the word-for-word transcript that was produced by the White House Situation Room. Now, that's the document that we got yesterday, even though it wasn't a word-for-word transcript. White House officials told me, the letter says, that they were directed by White House lawyers to remove the electronic transcript from the computer system in which such transcripts are typically stored. And then finally, the letter says, and this is page 4, that after the call, two representatives of the U.S. met with Ukrainian leaders on how to, quote, navigate the demands that the president had made of President Zelensky in the call. So this is a total of 7 pages in the letter with a 2-page classified appendix. Now, I will point out that the record of the call that we received yesterday was originally classified secret, no foreign, meaning it can't be shared with any foreign leaders. And I frankly don't know whether that's the typical way that a congratulatory call like this would be classified, whether it would be classified at the secret level or not. The only thing that strikes me that would possibly be classified in that letter is the discussion between the very brief discussion by the president and the president of Ukraine about wanting to buy additional anti-tank systems from the Pentagon. So these are we knew the basics of what this complaint was. We now have confirmation of what the original complaint was. The fact that this person in the intelligence community didn't know about this firsthand, but was relaying what he or she was told by several people at the White House, Savannah.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.